should have been a lot more cautious is all I should have slowed down and not bought as much land.
That, in a nutshell, is a major reason why hundreds of thousands of America's family farmers are in dire economic straits these days. Land value was skyrocketing in the late 70s, and people like Howard Hill were buying. But then came the grain embargo and the worldwide recession. Crop prices stayed the same or even dropped, but interest rates went up. Boom had become bust.
Many of the difficulties farmers face today traces to irresponsible fiscal and monetary policy. If it weren't for that irresponsible monetary fiscal policy, agriculture would be in far better shape today.
Policies which emanate from the nation's capital, and a lot of people believe both the White House and Congress can share the blame, even as the bureaucracy slowly grinds to a consensus on the latest of many, many farm bills.
The farm programs have been so mismanaged over the last 40 to 50 years. And the problem is that we don't start with a clear slate. If we could start with a clean slate, stay with a free market, maybe have some good soil conservation programs that we could bring in and put that into place, we could write a good farm program.
What we're trying to obtain is at least the American family farmer ought to have a fair market. The United States government ought to stand up with the American family farmer, making sure that governments overseas don't take unfair advantage of him.
He can compete against fair competition, and he should not be asked to compete indefinitely against unfair subsidized exports, and that's why we're putting such an aggressive push on to change the subsidies of some countries.
But while the White House and Capitol Hill haggle over how to get there from here, thousands upon thousands of farmers struggle with the stress of the present and uncertainty of the future. Howard Hill sold off much of his property, but he still owes $300,000 to the bank. Is this the kind of life he wants for his children? A question asked a lot these days by farmers.
I had a good start. I was hoping that they would have the kind of start that I had, but it's going to be tough now because it's going to take me quite a while to recover what I've already lost if things get better.
Until things get better, the family farmer will dwindle in numbers, but those remaining will become wiser by the experience. Everyone we talked to said if they had to do it over again, they'd still till the soil to help feed a nation and give their family the only way of life they know and love.
Themselves, and so many more people from JCPenney have put in a lot of work.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
After we found out that they'd had a bad earthquake downtown, well, we were frightened then because we just realized that we had just barely missed it.
Is this going to change your plans to go back to Mexico City?
Well, I said today I didn't think I'd ever go back, but we will. We have grandchildren down there, and we'll go back.
Let us call to mind our Savior. We worship you, He don't want anyone in the building other than firefighters. Nobody in the building.
There were some tense moments this afternoon as firefighters arrived on the scene. The explosion rocked the school so hard that some walls buckled, making it unsafe to go inside.
I heard an explosion. It sounded like a bunch of dynamite or a cannon or something going off. And so we pulled around the corner and stopped, and all the glass had flown out and stuff like that. And smoke was shooting up in the air.
School officials say 2 men on the roof were lighting a heater. As they walked away from the unit, the explosion occurred. A school librarian inside took cover.
I was sitting at my desk, and the side of the roof next to the hall started falling in, and I got under the desk until I made sure that the whole thing wasn't going to fall in on me, and then I got out.
Ironically, this was a teacher in service day, and it was fair day for students. The building was virtually empty when the blast occurred. Still, parents waited outside the school, making sure no one was injured. The majority of the damage is in the middle of the building. Still, officials will spend tomorrow assessing the damage and trying to determine the cause. Students won't be allowed to return until the structure is determined to be sound.
We will not be having school, obviously, tomorrow. We'd like the teachers and the students to stay home.
As the building stands in disrepair and the smell of smoke lingers in the air, life will go on for all those who work and attend school here. All are feeling lucky tonight that the tragedy wasn't worse. Ann Nyberg, News 4.
We had one structure involved that was divided into 4 apartments, 2 upstairs and 2 down. We had 3 families that occupied it, a total of 9 people in the structure that we had to evacuate once firefighters first arrived.
talking to several companies that have indicated they want to open up locations in the United States, and what they have done together with the private sector, and then they in turn make the sale. Parts are the types of companies that he's working with. Well, in India, we've made contacts. A group from Madras visited Oklahoma earlier this year, and they particularly wanted to talk about buying oil equipment. And we'll be met by about 12 Oklahomans. We arranged a series of meetings, and we're going to be trying to sell oil technology and oil equipment in India.
today's
The biggest improvement will be in the area of time. We'll be able to provide much speedier services to the pilot. In addition, we will be able to provide more real-time weather, and that's our primary mission, is to provide weather to pilots both during pre-flight and in in-flight services.
They were filling some Coleman lanterns with Coleman fuel, and a candle fell over and ignited the fumes. We had 3 victims.
It's time to get the heaters going again after a summer's rest. Oklahoma natural gas officials say they've already gotten 1,300 phone calls for assistance. If you decide to get the pilot light going yourself, use caution. Make sure you carefully read the instructions found inside the furnace. Once you've got the heater going, keep your thermostat at a reasonable level to keep your bills down. Remember, it's a long winter. Another way to help conserve on heat is to keep a fire going in the fireplace. Wood is being shipped in from southeastern Oklahoma and Arkansas. Right now you'll find an abundance of the precious commodity. A mixed batch of seasoned and green wood is your best bet.
Just make sure that it's all hardwood, mostly oak, hickory, blackjack's pretty good. Just make sure it's hardwood. A lot of times you'll get a lot of the old woods that burn up faster and you can put it in there.
And finally, don't neglect the plants. Keep shrubs in the yard watered. That'll help the root system. And for more fragile plants, make sure to cover them up.
I hate to see the frost coming this early because there's absolutely nothing we can do about it except to cover the flowers in the flower beds with an old bed sheet or a sheet of plastic to protect them, keep them from getting frosted.
The plants may look green now, but with the possibility of an early winter, they won't stay that way for long unless you take precautions. Ann Nyberg, News 4.
If we don't get some more winter clothes in, you can bet there's going to be a lot of people that's going to be cold. There's a few boxes saved, but mostly all the winter clothes are burnt. They're just gone.
Information given to me. I didn't think the cover-up was involved with me. Some of the clandestine operations of the United States government that they don't want people to imagine what an extreme embarrassment it is. Now, after seeing some of the things that the Marines have done with me lately, I'm convinced the cover-up does extend to Major Hugh Michael Fanning. In fact, I'm wondering if he isn't alive. And this is the first time that I've really felt that Hugh Fanning might be alive in Southeast Asia.
Royal Russell Long came to court as attorneys engaged in last-minute legal maneuvering before his murder preliminary hearing. Prosecutors will try to prove that Long kidnapped and murdered a couple of teenagers at the Oklahoma State Fair. Charlotte Kinsey and Cinda Pallett disappeared from the fair 4 years ago. Their bodies have never been found. During today's motion hearing, attorneys tried to trim the number of possible witnesses in the murder case. Long's defense attorney asked Special District Judge Stanley Pierce for access to some of the state's evidence. Defense lawyers especially want the opportunity to question a terminally ill homicide detective who reportedly once cleared Royal Long of wrongdoing in the case.
Well, when you clear a guy as a suspect a month after the alleged crime occurred, I think it's very important. And we're seeking the ability to take his deposition to perpetuate his testimony in the event that he's not here for trial.
Prosecutors want permission to bring up information about Long's criminal past. The former truck driver is currently serving 2 life prison sentences for the abductions of 2 teenage girls in Wyoming.
Up to now, prosecutors and defense attorneys have not been able to agree on very much. However, both sides do agree on one point. Both sides say that the murder preliminary hearing for Royal Russell Long will be a lengthy, tough battle. Scott Wallace, News 4 at the Oklahoma County Courthouse.
Inside this patrol car is Pottawattamie County Sheriff Deputy David Kubiak. He furnishes his own car, his own uniform, and his own gun. He is in danger of losing his life every time he makes a call in rural Pott County. Today, it was just a routine burglary complaint, but whatever the situation, Kubiak says he loves his profession. But he may soon have to look for other work because of a $50,000 budget cutback at the Pott County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff officials say it will reduce manpower and ultimately affect the entire population of Pottawattamie County.
You left your residence last night at 8:30 p.m., right?
Yes, sir.
Today, Kubiak had to travel the entire distance of the county, north and south, just to answer 2 calls. He says it's a dangerous situation.
Our response time used to be about 15 minutes. Now it's anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours because we are extremely short of men.
The budget crisis is a much talked about controversy here in Shawnee, the county seat of Pottawattamie County. These citizens do not want the sheriff's office to lose anyone because they fear the consequences of rising crime, and they believe it will happen. The sheriff agrees, and today he said he has had enough of budget cutbacks and manpower reductions.
The calls that we make are help me type calls. If we're not available to do this, someone's going to die.
Because of that, Sheriff Paul Abel told reporters today he is filing a lawsuit against his own county commissioners and the county excise board in order to get the $50,000 back into his budget. Abel says he simply cannot protect his own county with the funding he has been given.
There is no way that I'm going to get a phone call from some lady saying, help, somebody's breaking in my house, and I'm not going to tell her that I've got to wait until 8 o'clock the next morning before I can send somebody out. I can't do that.
Abel took his action a step further and requested the state auditor to inspect all funds being received and expended by Pottawattamie County officials. He says there have been property tax increases of up to 150%, and he wants to know where all of the money has gone.
Pottawattamie County Commissioners say the money was divided as evenly as possible this year, and they feel Abel got his fair share. But the arguments will stop for now. The court will decide whether or not the sheriff has enough men to protect his county and how much money, if any, is missing. Kevin Ogle, News 4 in Shawnee.
People were killed when the Aerlex plant exploded last June. It was the nation's deadliest fireworks plant explosion. Since then, it's been learned there were serious safety code violations and underage workers employed at the plant.
Why did the conditions at Aerlex go unnoticed by federal and state agencies responsible for overseeing the plant?
Federal agencies estimate more than half of all the injuries suffered at fireworks factories every year take place at unlicensed facilities.
What is being done to ensure that other plants now and in the future will operate safely?
A congressional subcommittee convened in Tulsa this morning. It wants to get to the bottom of the Aerlex tragedy and head off anything like it in the future. Today it took testimony from the two agencies in charge of ensuring safety at the nation's fireworks plants. As it turns out, OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, wasn't even aware of Aerlex.
Our estimate of the number of employees actually engaged in manufacturing legal, legitimate fireworks is, we estimate somewhere in the vicinity of 1,000 people.
Throughout the country?
Throughout the country, yes. We have not been a high priority item for the Occupational Safety and Health Administration.
The inspection responsibility falls on OSHA and the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Bureau. They are supposed to work together but did not correspond. And ATF told the committee its inspectors are not trained properly on what to look for.
Our inspectors, quite honestly, are not trained in all of the OSHA requirements to review all of the
But it doesn't take any OSHA expert to recognize such obvious violations. The question I ask you is, why wasn't OSHA contacted given these obvious violations?
I really can't offer you any explanation.
This committee will now take all of the testimony gathered here today back to Washington, where it will have to answer two questions. First of all, were the regulations governing the inspections at fireworks factories adequate and simply not working because of a breakdown between agencies? Or were those regulations not adequate, in which case new ones would have to be established and then approved by Congress? The hope through all of this is to prevent another Hallett. Terry Cook, News 4 in Tulsa.
Because it's been my experience that whenever you have co-defendants whose stories are opposed, like in this case, that the needs of justice can't really be served by trying them together. What happens is a practical point. What happens is you end up is you got one defendant being tried by the other defendant in the state. It's always 2-on-1. We're both trying to convict Cannon. Cannon and the state are both trying to convict Lafevers. And it's just fundamentally unfair. Justice can't be served that way.
Dr. Ruth, have you accepted Christ as your personal Savior?
All of us come from a background
where the Victorian Puritan ethic, where the Victorian mother told her daughter at the night of the wedding, lie back and think of England. Indication. Of course, if two people do have sexual intercourse in order to have a baby, then all sex is not indicated. You can't have a baby for 3 years before evaluation, right? And the reason, dump button. Now don't forget, I'm not doing that in Oklahoma.
The last pictures I have were taken on September the 7th in Amarillo. Nuclear weapons truck here, and you can see the silver creed proof, and this is a sort of a panorama of two photographs with
making Oklahoma. That's been achieved for 1 week. We'd like to see church communities.
The Department of Energy placed its drivers in the position of having to go over dangerous, unfamiliar routes simply to thwart the idea of public examination, public viewing of their H-bomb trucks.
A 16-year-old South Dakota girl told a hair-raising tale of how Royal Russell Long bound her hands with coat hangers, covered her mouth with duct tape, and then raped her last year. The teenager said Long also tied up her 13-year-old friend. Long confessed to kidnapping and molesting the two teenagers. He is currently serving 2 life sentences for those crimes. Prosecutors are hoping the confessions will convince a judge that the former truck driver should stand trial for the 1981 kidnapping and murders of Charlotte Kinsey and Cinda Pallett. An Idaho crime expert testified today that he found what he believes to be blood on a trunk mat in Royal Russell Long's former rental car. The expert testified that some photographs taken of the car's trunk using a special scientific process, quote, are consistent with what 2 small bodies would look like if they had been placed in the trunk. Another expert testified that human hairs found in Long's home and former rental car could have come from the 2 missing Oklahoma girls. A judge is expected to decide tomorrow if Royal Russell Long should stand trial for the missing girls' kidnapping and murders. Scott Wallace, News 4 at the Oklahoma County Courthouse.